Hello, students. The topic that we are going to discuss today is the Federal Court of India. Now, these are revisionary topics. I've already done Federal Court of India. In your syllabus, it is mentioned Supreme Court of India. But yes, Supreme Court of India was functional after 1950. So basically, the origin of Supreme Court of India, that you have to do in this topic. And therefore, I have written the name of the topic as Federal Court of India. And I have mentioned in the brackets also that it is the present Supreme Court of India. So the present Supreme Court of India, which is located near Pragati Maidan, that you find was actually known as, initially it was known as the Federal Court of India, and it was established by the Government of India Act of 1935. But after 1950, when the Privy Council was abolished after 1950, in the independent India, it came to be known as the Supreme Court of India. So basically, what we have to do, we have to understand the origin and the development of Federal Court of India, how it has developed and how it has transformed in the present day into a Supreme Court of India. So I'll initially start with the Federal Court of India that was formed under the Government of India Act of 1935, and then I'll move on towards the present Supreme Court of India that has been constituted in 1950. Now I'll start with my presentation. Now, first of all, we'll do the reasons for the establishment of Federal Court. That means why Federal Court was necessary to establish. So the High Court was the highest authority in India. Over it, there was a Privy Council, but to approach the Privy Council, it required huge expenses and time of the litigants. Hence, the establishment of the Federal Court was made necessary. So you people know, by the Act of 1861, High Courts were established in three provinces, one in three presidencies. One is Madras, Calcutta, and Bombay. So when high courts were established in 1861 in these three provinces, obviously it was difficult for every person to reach to the high court. Why it is difficult? Because it was situated, the high courts were situated in Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras. And for example, a person has to, like a person who belongs to Delhi or Mathura, for him it is very difficult to either reach to different extents. Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras both are at different distance for that person. And appeal from the High Court at that time used to go to the Privy Council, which is again located in England. So it was becoming very difficult and very expensive for the litigants, for the people who wanted to file case, to actually file their case in the High Courts of Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. And they wanted a court where they can easily and conveniently go and register their case. Now, accordingly, in November 1934, the Joint Select Committee of both the Houses of British Parliament, in its report, recommend for the establishment of one federal court. So there was a Joint Select Committee in the Houses of British Parliament. So in the British Parliament, if I talk about House of Lords and House of Commons, there was a joint selection committee of both the houses, and in its report, it submitted that it is important to have a federal court. Why it is important? Because this federal court will be for the entire region. Because earlier there are three high courts. One is in Calcutta, Madras, and Bombay. But now what we require, a federal court that will be for the entire country. Now, thus the British Parliament passed the Government of India Act of 1935. The said act provided for the establishment of a Federal Court of India under Section 200. So I have already told you, by the Government of India Act of 1935, when I was doing these acts with you, I told you that in these acts, it's because of the Government of India Act of 1935 that the Federal Court of India was established under Section 200 of the Government of India Act of 1935. And thus on 1st October 1937, the Federal Court came into being. So this is the date when the Federal Court came into existence, came into being. And the seat of the court was the Chamber of the Princes in the Parliament building in Delhi. So where was the seat of the court? Where it was situated? Seat of the court basically means where it was situated. It was situated in the Parliament building in Delhi. So the Chamber of Princes was a chamber in the Parliament building, which is located in Delhi. If you people know, the Parliament which is there in Delhi, that has been constructed by the Britishers. So that the beautiful Parliament that you see in Delhi, whenever you just in front of India Gate, the other side of the India Gate, if you'll see just in front of the India Gate, you'll find the Indian Parliament, beautifully constructed, that has been constructed by the Britishers. And the seat of the court was there in the Chamber of the princes in the parliament building in Delhi, and it was a court of record. Court of record in this case, it will have all the records. Court of record basically means whatever cases are coming to it will record all the cases. Court of records were actually called the courts which used to compile all the cases and keep all the cases as a record for the future references. And Sir Maurice Goyer was the first Chief Justice, and the other two preceding judges were Sir Mohammed Suleiman and M.R. Jayakar. So there was one person who was made the Chief Justice at that time, and he was an Englishman. Sir Maurice Goyer was the first. Sorry for the interruption. Sir Maurice Goyer was the first Chief Justice, and there were other other judges to assist him, other judges with him. They were Indians. One was Sir Mohammed Suleiman, another was M.R. Jayakar. Now, the federal court saved time and expenses of the litigants. It was also a convenience to the Indians. Therefore, the federal court lessened the workload of the Privy Council. So, yes, what used to happen earlier, people from the High Court used to travel to Privy Council. Like, it was very difficult, and most of the people, because of no expenses, because of very less amount of money, they were not able to. Privy Council is situated in London, and most of the people who were not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the High Court, they never used to approach the Privy Council, because obviously that was very expensive for them. And therefore, by the establishment of a federal court, it has become a little convenient for them that from the High Courts, if they are not satisfied, they can move their complaints to the federal court. But yes, there were certain conditions which I'll tell you. So I hope you have understood till now. In the introduction, you will write that High Court was initially the highest court in India, and there was a Privy Council which was there in England. That was the Court of Appeal. But what has happened on 1st October 1937, the Federal Court came into being, and Sir Maurice Goyer was the first Chief Justice. He was assisted by two more judges. And this saved time actually of the people, because initially people who were not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the High Court, they used to very few of the people used to go and approach to Privy Council in London. But now things have changed because of the establishment of the Federal Court. It is easy for the people to approach the Federal Court of India from High Court. And Federal Court of India has also lessened the work of the Privy Council. That means obviously Privy Council, if it used to have a lot of cases, have now reduced. The cases of the Privy Council have been reduced because much of the burden has been taken by the Federal Court. Now we come to the appointment of judges, how the judges are appointed. Chief Justice and other judges were to be appointed by His Majesty. So who will appoint? It is His Majesty. That means the Queen or the King of the England will appoint the Chief Justice and other judges of this Federal Court. They were to hold office till the age of 65 years. So the retirement age was fixed. 65 years they'll be able to hold the office. Third is His Majesty was empowered to remove any judge from his office on the grounds of misbehavior or infirmity of mind or body, but on the recommendation of the Privy Council. So His Majesty, that means the Queen or King, was empowered to remove any judge from his office. That means they were empowered to select the judge also, they were appoint the judge also, and at the same time they can remove any judge also on the ground of, if you people know, at present, the removal of the judges are on two grounds in India. One is proved misbehavior, another is incapacity. So they were also the grounds at this time also, but there was a little change. The two grounds for a person to be removed as a judge is, first is grounds of misbehavior. If it misbehaves, like with the prestiged, with the East India Company people, or if it misbehaves with the any form of misbehavior, is treated as a ground for his removal. Or infirmity of mind or body. Infirmity means basically everything is very sound, body and mind. Infirmity means either the body or the mind is not firm. Firm means as in he is not stable, he is not firm in the sense it is not sound. So basically these were the two grounds on which the person can be removed. So His Majesty was empowered to remove any judge from his office on the grounds of misbehavior or infirmity of body or mind, but on the recommendation of the Privy Council. So even if the Privy Council recommends that this person needs to be removed, this judge is not performing well, this judge is misbehaving, this judge has incapacity, then obviously it will be removed by the crown. So basically the removal and the appointment of the judges of the federal court were in the hands of the crown, but obviously the others can suggest him, like the Privy Council can suggest on these matters. Now we come to the qualification. What are the qualifications required? 5 years experience as a judge of High Court. So if you are served in the High Court of either Calcutta, Madras and Bombay for 5 years as a judge, then obviously you are eligible for the appointment as a judge of the Federal Court of India. Second is 10 years standing as an advocate or barrister. For example, you have been a lawyer, a standing lawyer in the High Court, then obviously you can be a judge of the Federal Court of India. And 10 years standing as a pleader in a High Court. Or for example, you have been a 10 years standing as a pleader, one who pleads the cases, then obviously you can be appointed as a judge of the High Court, judge of the Federal Court. So these were the experiences required: 5 years experience as a judge of the High Court, 10 years standing as an advocate or barrister, a lawyer, and 10 years standing as a pleader, one who pleads the case in the High Court. So either of them, either 1, 2, or 3, you can become a Chief Justice or Chief Justice of the Federal Court or the judges of the Federal Court. Next is jurisdiction. That means when Federal Court of India established, what will be the jurisdiction of this court? What will be the area of this court that it will cover? Now, under the Government of India Act of 1925, the Federal Court was given 3 kinds of jurisdiction. Now, you people know there are 3 kinds of jurisdiction. One is the original jurisdiction. Second is the appellate jurisdiction, and the third one is the advisory jurisdiction. So at present also the Supreme Court of India enjoys all 3 jurisdiction. There is an original jurisdiction, there is appellate jurisdiction, and there is advisory jurisdiction. But we'll deal with these. All these jurisdiction in detail. Now, first of all is the original jurisdiction. Now, what does original jurisdiction say? Section 204 of the Government of India Act 1925 provided that the original jurisdiction of the Federal Court was confined to all these things. First of all, it will cater to the disputes between units of the Dominion. So initially, you people know that the Britishers were agreeing to give India Dominion status. Dominion status means it will not be completely independent. It will be independent to decide its internal affair, but the external affairs of the country will still be under the control of the Britishers. This was the status that Britishers were initially ready to give Indians, a Dominion status. But obviously, India wanted a Purna Swaraj, so it did not happen. But yes, one of the jurisdiction of the Federal Court of India is that if the disputes arise between the units, between the states, then obviously that will be solved by the Federal Court of India. And at present also, if you people know, the Supreme Court of India is only empowered to solve the disputes between the states also. So for example, there is a Kaveri dispute that is solved by the Supreme Court. If there is any dispute between the states, it is solved by the Supreme Court of India. So similarly, at that time, Federal Court of India will solve the disputes between the units in the sense the states or the dominions. Dominions are also for example, there is a Dominion of India and Pakistan. So the cases between dominions of India and Pakistan will be solved by the Federal Court. Now, disputes between the Dominion and any of the units. So for example, Dominion means the center. For example, there is a dispute between Dominion India, that means state of India, the entire center of India, and any one of the units. For example, India is fighting with the center of India that is situated in Delhi. The center, if you people know, center is fighting with Calcutta. So there will be a dispute between the Dominion, between center and the unit, that is Calcutta, where it involved a question of fact or a law or a question of law on which the existence of a legal right dependent. So when it will solve the disputes between the center and a unit only when it involved a question of fact or question of law. See, question of fact or question of law are typically law related terms, so you must be knowing better than me. But obviously what I've understood out of it is any question that involves a fact or a law that needs to be interpreted, then obviously it can be decided by the Federal Court of India. And then as it involved interpretation of Government of India Act of 1925 or any order in council made thereunder. So it also has the jurisdiction to interpret the Government of India Act of 1935. So basically, Government of India Act of 1935 has only empowered this Federal Court of India to come into existence, and the Federal Court of India has been given the right to even interpret the Government of India Act of 1935. So it has the power to interpret the Government of India Act of 1935 also. But the extent of legislative or executive authority vested in the federation by virtue of instrument of accession of the state is involved. Now, it has to interpret the Government of India Act of 1935 only to the extent of legislative and executive authority vested in the federation by virtue of the instrument of accession of the state is involved. So you people know most of the princely states have assessed to the Indian Union. They have become a part of Indian Union. So what will be the legislative and executive authority of that state when it has come into India? That needs to be interpreted. That will be interpreted by the Federal Court of India. So basically, it will interpret the Government of India Act of 1935 to the extent when he has to clearly state about what will be the duties of the states that are joining in India, what will be the legislative and executive authority that they will have. So basically, the Federal Court of India will clearly interpret it from the Government of India Act of 1935 that what will be their executive and legislative authority that they have, and what are the legislative and executive authority that the center have. So, but the federal court had no power to entertain suits brought by the private individual against the dominion. So, if me and you, common citizens, bring any dispute against the dominion, against the center, then obviously Federal Court of India, then obviously the Federal Court of India will have no power to entertain it. But if I talk about the present times, you people know in the fundamental rights that has been guaranteed and protected by the Supreme Court of India, that means in case of violation of your fundamental rights, you can directly approach the Supreme Court of India. That clearly states that now the Supreme Court of India also can listen to the disputes brought by the private individuals, but earlier it did not used to happen. Originally, the Federal Court of India used to solve the disputes between the center and the states, and between states on these grounds, and it also had the right to interpret the Government of India Act of 1935, wherein the authority of the legislative and executive functions of the state that are joining in India has to be clearly demarcated. Now, the court was also authorized to enforce its own decision directly, but with the aid of civil and judicial authorities throughout this federation. So, the court was also not authorized to enforce its own decisions directly, but with the aid of civil and judicial authorities. So, it cannot directly enforce its decisions on the people, or on the states or the center. It has to be done through civil and judicial authorities throughout the federation. And Section 208 provided for a right of appeal to the Privy Council from the judgments of the Federal Court in the exercise of its original jurisdiction if such decisions involved an interpretation of the Government of India Act of 1935 or any order in council made thereunder. So, Section 208 of this Government of India Act of 1925 also provided for the right to appeal to the Privy Council. So, if a person is not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the federal court in only interpretation of the Government of India Act of 1925, suppose, for example, the Federal Court of India has interpreted the Government of India Act of 1925 in a certain way, but the person is not satisfied and he's saying, no, this means actually this thing, then obviously he can approach the Privy Council, which is located in England. So, I hope the original jurisdiction is clear to you people. I'm just revising it with you people. First of all, it will solve disputes between the units, between the states, and between the dominions, between two dominions like India and Pakistan. It will also solve disputes between the dominions and units. That means between the center and the states. If, first of all, any question of fact or question of law is concerned, it will also interpret the Government of India Act of 1925, where the extent of legislative or executive authority needs to be clearly tell. Then it does not have any power to entertain suits brought by the private individuals, and it can not directly it is not directly authorized to enforce its decision throughout the federation, but it can do it through civil and judicial authorities. And there is also a right to appeal to the Privy Council from the judgments of the federal court, but that decisions need to involve the interpretation of the Government of India Act of 1930. So these are the original jurisdiction of the Federal Court of India. Now we move on to the appellate jurisdiction. You know what is the appellate jurisdiction means. In India, the Supreme Court is the highest court of appeal. Highest court of appeal means you cannot go beyond Supreme Court if you're not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court is the final authority, the final court in India, where the decision is made final. So for example, you approach the district court first, you are not satisfied, you approach the high court, you're not satisfied, you approach the Supreme Court. If you're not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the Supreme Court, you cannot appear, or you cannot present your case anywhere else. Supreme Court is the highest law court of the land. But what is the appellate court of the Federal Court of India? Will deal in detail. According to Section 205 of the Government of India Act of 1935, an appeal shall lie to the federal court from any judgment, decree, or final order of a high court in British India, provided that the high court certified that the case involved a substantial question of law as to the interpretation of Government of India Act of 1935 or an order in council of the Governor General in council. Now see what is the case. Yes, from a high court, a person can appeal to the Federal Court of India. That means why Federal Court of India has been formulated. I've already told you that people used to go from High Court to the Privy Council, which was becoming very expensive for them, and therefore the Federal Court of India was created. But now this provision says that a person who's not satisfied by the judgment rendered by the High Court, he can obviously approach the Federal Court of India only if the High Court certified that. That means you require a permission from the High Court. Over here, the High Court has more powers. You are seeing that. So if High Court certify that this case involves a substantial question of law, substantial, that means interpretation is required of the Government of India Act of 1935. So in any case, if it requires, if it is solved by the High Court, and if a person is not satisfied, then the High Court has to certify that yes, the person can move its case to the Federal Court of India because it involves an interpretation of the Government of India Act of 1935. And if that case, suppose, does not involve the interpretation of Government of India Act of 1935, then the person cannot approach the Federal Court of India. So appellate jurisdiction, yes, it will be the highest court of land in India, but it will only be appealed by a litigant if the High Court certify that this case requires this case involves a substantial question of law that requires the interpretation of Government of India Act of 1935. So you can see High Court has to certify, otherwise the person cannot appeal to the Federal Court of India. So this was one of the provision. Initially, the Federal Court exercised appellate jurisdiction in constitutional cases under the Government of India Act of 1935. Its appellate jurisdiction was extended to civil and criminal cases from 1948 only. So, you people know, initially, because it used to it used to interpret the Government of India Act of 1935. So it used to be appeal. That appeal can be made only in constitutional cases where interpretation is required. But if you people know today, the Supreme Court of India can be approached in civil, criminal, any matter. So basically, this power that it can be appealed in civil, criminal, any matter was gained by him in 1948. So this is the actual functioning of the Federal Court. Now we come to advisory jurisdiction. Now what is advisory? What used to happen is that the Governor General under Section 213 of the Government of India Act of 1925, if at any time it appeared to the Governor General that question of law has arisen, which was of such a nature and of such importance that it was expedient to obtain the opinion of Federal Court for its consideration, and the Federal Court was to report to Governor General on the same. The question for opinion invariably involved the interpretation of the Constitution Act, that is the Government of India Act of 1935. The Governor General was, however, not bound by the advice tendered by him by the Federal Court. Now, at present, also, you know, the President has the power. You can say advisory jurisdiction is one of the jurisdiction that the Supreme Court of India enjoys today also. And what is the advisory jurisdiction? For example, in case of emergency that happens to the country and the President of India requires the legal advice of the Supreme Court of India regarding the interpretation of the Constitution or regarding the interpretation of any law, then obviously the President of India can seek the advice or can ask for the advice of the Supreme Court of India. But both of them being the ultimate authority in India, Supreme Court is the highest judicial office, President is the highest executive office. Therefore, if the President asks for an advice of the Supreme Court has the right to give the advice or not to give the advice. And secondly, if the Supreme Court gives the advice to the president, then it is upon the president also whether to follow that advice or not to follow that advice. This is known as advisory jurisdiction. But at that time, the president was not there. The highest position of executive authority in India was the Governor General. And therefore, if any question arises of interpretation of the Government of India Act of 1935, then the Governor General can ask for the advice of the Federal Court of India, and it is not binding on the governor. If the advice is given by the Federal Court of India, it is not binding on the Governor General to accept it, or to it can also decline the advice. So this is known as advisory jurisdiction. Now, Section 212 of the Government of India Act of 1935 provided that the law declared by the Federal Court and any judgment of the Privy Council will be binding on all the courts in British India. So what happened in by the Government of India Act of 1935, there was a section known as 202, and it made it clear that the law declared by the Federal Court, that means whatever the law that has been declared by the Federal Court and any judgment which has been passed by the Privy Council will be binding on all the courts in British India. That means, obviously, because Federal Court India is the highest court of the land by the Government of India Act of 95, therefore, whatever decision is taken by the Federal Court of India, all the lower courts, that means the high courts or the district courts, have to accept it. And thus the High Court and the subordinate courts in British India were absolutely bound by the decision of the Privy Council and the Federal Court. So whatever the decisions which are given by the Federal Court and the Privy Council will be binding on all the subordinate courts and the high courts. So basically, Privy Council was the highest court of appeal for Indians, but it was situated in England. But in India, within India, the highest court of appeal at that time was the Federal Court. So therefore, both of their decision, the Privy Council and the Federal Court, were binding on the other courts like the high courts and subordinate courts. Now we come to the last part, that is abolition of the Privy Council. You people know that the Federal Court worked for a short period of almost 12 years. So from 1935 to 1947, the court was functional. But what happened in 1947? India gained independence, and after that, in place of the Federal Court of India, we have the Supreme Court of India, was established on 25th January 1950 by the abolition of the Privy Council Jurisdiction Act 1949. So there was an act that was passed known as Abolition of the Privy Council Jurisdiction Act 1949, and after this act, the Federal Court of India was abolished, and the present Supreme Court of India, which is situated at Pragati Maidan, you people have seen that was established on 25th January 1950. So these has been the developments of the Federal Court of India. If the question comes in your examination that describe the origin of the Supreme Court of India, or if the question comes what has been the origin of the Federal Court of India, both means the same thing. So if Supreme Court is asked, it also means the Federal Court of India. Federal Court of India is the Supreme Court. Initially, the Supreme Court of India was known as Federal Court of India, but by the Act of 1947, or by the when Supreme Court was actually inaugurated, it was called as the Supreme Court of India, because it was the Supreme Court of the land. So therefore, I hope you are able to understood this. This was a revisionary topic. I have done this topic in the class also. And while you are doing this, you can also, while you are doing this topic, you can also provide for all the these what you can say, the constitutional remedies which are there. You people know habeas corpus, mandamus, quo warranto, certiorari, and prohibition. All these are the constitutional remedies that has been provided, the writs that has been provided. So once you will be done with the abolition of the Privy Council and how the Supreme Court of India has been established, you can write a little bit about the writs that are there with the Supreme Court of India. Now, what is the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of India? By this, you can easily end up your answer. This is the Indian legal and constitutional history part of the Federal Court of India. So I hope you have understood this lecture. And why I'm not doing the writs with you people, because already this has been done with you people in the constitutional subject that has been taught to you. Therefore, and if you require, if you want me to do the writs, just mail me the same. I'll be doing the writs with you people also. Habeas corpus, mandamus, certiorari, prohibition, and quo warranto. These are the 5 writs that you need to do. So apart from this, all this, one more slide can be added about the writs. So this will complete your answer. I hope you have understood this lecture. Thank you so much. In case of any doubts, you can mail it to me. My mail ID is swati.saxena@lc.edu.in. Thank you so much.